Hey, beautiful humans. Welcome to the Bold Women in Business podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Honeyman, founder of Honeybebold and fellow bold woman in business. This show is all about highlighting women who are changing the world, helping other women, and kicking ass along the way. Let's dive in. Today, I am very excited to welcome my friend Natasha Golinsky to the show. Natasha and I have been connected for a while, and we kind of run in similar circles in the female entrepreneurship space. And we both are running agencies, and we've had such great conversations so far. So I'm just really excited to have you here on the show. I had a whole different episode planned for this conversation. And then we wound up spending the last 20 minutes talking about something just unexpected that hit Natasha in the face. And I think it's too important to not talk about. And Natasha is very generously comfortable talking about it. So I think that it's something that we need to focus on. So Natasha, why don't you introduce what happened in the last couple of weeks and we can kind of go from there.
Well, thank you so much for the chance to be here and share. And as speaking to other women in business, I have run my own business for since I was 13, but at least for my entire adult life, I have 3 teenage kids. And I was recently, we had chatted about 2 months ago, I found a lump on the right side. And I'm the kind of person who trained for a bikini competition. I'm a yoga teacher, never smoked, never drank, never done drugs, wellness, journaling, therapist, massage, go for walks, grounding, whole thing, and was actually diagnosed with breast cancer 2 weeks ago. And so now definitely in the phase of what does that mean? With my career, with the business, with employees, with the family. And now the job is, what do I do? I've got so many notes and so many ideas, but it's like putting someone in place in case I'm sick, right? Making sure no one on my team loses their job, making sure enough work's coming in, building out all my systems so that if I'm out, in chemo, how do my clients still get serviced? How do I support my family? I'm a single income household. It's just me, right? So a lot of really, really good questions. But yeah, definitely a curveball, for sure, a curveball.
When we're talking about breast cancer, obviously this is an especially important topic when we're talking to female entrepreneurs, right? Yeah. I don't know what the numbers are in the US, but it is so common. And I think that the questions that you're bringing up here are things that most of us don't really think about as entrepreneurs. So many of us are so focused on the here and now. How do I get through today? And how do I get through tomorrow? And how do I make this year successful? And depending on the size of your business, how do I keep my employees happy and engaged and all of that? But we're not necessarily thinking about if the unthinkable happens.
Yeah, it's not something you think about when you're 43 years old, right? Last week I had an appointment with the oncologist and you're waiting in the waiting room and everyone is 60, 70 years old and sitting there and no hair and you're sitting there feeling good, 43, and they call your name. Like, what's happening right now? It's surreal. It's just like, really? They call your name out? Oh, we have your bone scan booked. And you're like, oh my God, what is happening? It's definitely something that when you live a healthy life, you never think about it. I never thought about it. And then next thing, you're the person who clicks the box. Have you had cancer? Yes.
I can't even imagine having to navigate. You talked through I don't even know how many appointments you've had and all these phone calls that you need to be following up with, and you're setting surgery dates and you're juggling so much. Yeah. And on top of that, you have a business to worry about.
Yeah, exactly. You got family and business and partner and dog.
And your kids.
There's a lot. But the beauty, I think, of the tie-in with the entrepreneurship is one of the things I've always been really, really great at is building teams. And if I didn't have a team that I could offload to, I would be out a lot. I've run my current business, like you mentioned, we're both in the agency space. I've run my agency for 9 years and I have more or less had the same team since day one. I've never had anybody quit. I've had to fire some people, but I've never had anybody quit. So I have a solid team. Everyone knows what's going on. I know how to put the right people on the bus. I know how to delegate, move myself away. Today, I literally took my entire task list, passed it to my assistant because after this call, I'm going for blood work. I've got to go get a cable for my printer because it's not working. So I have to print off all these insurance forms. That's what I'm doing today now. Before, my day was something very different. I had a very different day plan, but I have an incredible assistant. And I'm like, can you deal with this today? And she's like, yeah, done. A lot of women in business, we have control freak problems, or we have delegation problems, or we're perfectionistic. And we won't have that space when something happens. And if I had to send a message about health and business, it's you need support. even in this cancer conversation, I saw the oncologist last week, and the first piece of paperwork they give you is mental health questionnaire. Are you okay? Do you have a team? Do you have support? Do you have someone who can help take care of you? Do you have people to back you, to drive you to? And it's personal, obviously. It's talking about your family life, right? It applies at work too. Can I walk away? Can I do this? Can my team run without me? Can sales be done without me? Can I be lying in bed, sick as hell, and not worry about it? If I had one message about if you're a business person, if you're the person doing it all, I can't say enough about that team piece. Without your team, you're dead. I don't know. That's just my soapbox.
It's such an important point. I'd love to hear, as someone who has run an agency for 9 years, it sounds like you've built just a really, really solid team. I'm much earlier in my business. I'm coming up on 2 years and I have a really small team and they're amazing, but I'm still in the team building phase. Obviously, every business is different. If we look at it more globally, what do you think are the most important roles or jobs of the team if you're thinking about future proofing your business, right? Making sure that your business can stand for whatever reason you can't be there. What do you think is most important?
Well, my first hire was a bookkeeper. She was my very first hire. Well, sorry, not my first. I'm not a designer. I'm not a developer. I work in the web world, but my first hire was a web developer. Again, my story is it was an accident. I used to be a management consultant and then they asked me to do a website. So I hired a guy to help with the website. And next thing you know, I'm running a web agency. It was never what I set out to do. So from day one, I've had someone doing my deliverables per se. But my first hire outside of that person was a bookkeeper. I knew that in order to stay in business, you need someone to stay on top of the money, right?
Yeah.
So tax, account management, invoicing, obviously, tax remitting, sales tax. For me, hiring is very driven by what do I hate to do? And like having run my own business for 30 years, different businesses, and I also do business coaching on the side, but it was always the conversation people ask me, what do I get rid of first? And the question is always, what do you hate the most? And I'm not just saying this now because of my health situation, but even in past conversations I've had with podcasts or summits, as an entrepreneur, we can set this up however we want, right? And if your work doesn't bring you joy and make your life better, then you're not doing it properly. Because as an entrepreneur, we can put people in place to take everything we hate off our plate. And so all we're left with is the part that we like to do. So in my business, I've always looked at like, what kills my joy? If you have to get up and do it every day as an entrepreneur, no one's telling you to be there. No one's paying you. So it better be something that you love to do. I've always created my job description and my role and my lane around the parts of my work that light me up, that I look forward to doing. And I've always outsourced to that. So for example, I hate quality assurance, so I have a QA person on the team. I hate document management. I have a virtual assistant. I hate writing proposals. I have a marketing manager. So I have all these people that support me in my ability to do the parts that I like to do. So in terms of who to hire first, it's a really great question. And it should revolve around you. It should revolve around what brings me joy in the work that I do, and things that make you not work that day. You need to get rid of that. And again, I would have said this 3 months ago, and you can hear my old podcast I've been on before. I mean, even now, it's more important. It's even that much more important. Every day counts. And if you hate what you do, that sucks. And then as an entrepreneur, we have the control to change it. I know for me, I hate the process of scoping a job and writing the proposal and sending it for revisions and writing an estimate and then doing the invoicing and doing the retainers and setting it up in their software program and checking it and time tracking it. I don't like any of that, but I love sales. And I love the chit chat and I love the triage and discovery. So literally on my team, that's what I do now 90% of the time. But I used to do all of that for 6 years, right? And then no more than that, 8 years. And last year I had a project management assistant and now she does all of it. It's fun now. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it's so custom. It's so to the person, right?
Yeah, no, I think that totally makes sense. And I actually, I am building my team in a very similar way because I actually hired very early on in my business, maybe 2 months in, I hired my best friend in the world. Actually, we've been friends since we're teenagers and she is amazing with operations and systems and things like that. And I was like, I can't do that. I can't do that part of running a business. I can do the other parts. And I'm really good at the other parts and I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at, and make me look at a spreadsheet and I will tear my eyes out, you know?
I cannot, do you read your financials? I'm like, I have my bookkeeper read my financials and send me the highlights.
Yeah, exactly.
I think to honor that is so important because this is the biggest mistake I see in the coaching work and the agency life work is there's so much messaging that you should do this.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, there's 6 billion people in the world. Someone else can do this. One of the things that we make a mistake, and I'm so grateful that I learned this really early, is when you're leading a business, you want people who are better than you at everything on your team. You want people that you're like, holy shit, how did you do that? You want those people on your payroll. Because I think there's a lot of ego around entrepreneurs where we think, oh, we're the only ones that can do this. And you're like, well, in a world of 6 billion people, that is very unlikely.
Yeah.
And maybe there's parts of your business that only you can do in the way that you do it. But guaranteed 95% you could outsource. Guaranteed. Because I've done it. Literally in my business, I have no idea what they do. In many cases, I can sell the job and make sure that everybody is on board with what we're doing and everybody's had their input and we're good to go. But once it's underway, I don't have anybody codes anything. I don't know how a designer does her thing. I have no idea. But I don't have to know because they know. And that'll work. That's very freeing when you have incredible people around you, such that when a situation comes up, whether it's emotionally or physically, logistically, financially, you check out. Even if it's just for my afternoon today, it's covered. I don't think about it. I'll probably check in on my phone when I'm sitting in the waiting room for 45 minutes waiting for my blood test, but otherwise I could watch something funny on YouTube.
Yeah, which is so powerful. You've written a lot about the idea of outsourcing in a way that actually increases your profitability and allows people to get more done in less time. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what's your magic secret?
Oh, I love it. So in my business coaching work, my claim to fame is full-time income, part-time hours. As I mentioned, I hate the word single parent. I'm a one-income household. I hate the stigma of what single parenting looks like. I'm a one-income household. I have 3 teenagers. And when their dad and I split up 7 years ago, the way that the math worked was there wasn't going to be any alimony or any child support. And all of a sudden, I essentially went from being a stay-at-home parent, making $2,000 a month, to all of a sudden needing to live in a very expensive city. I live in Vancouver, Canada. 100 grand gets you fucking nowhere. I shouldn't say it on your podcast, but like,
oh, you can say whatever you want.
And I was like, sweet Jesus, like, what am I going to do? And so I ended up getting a bunch of jobs. I was working in a restaurant. I was teaching Spanish. I was renting rooms in my house. I was Airbnb, anything I could do to make money. Because I was like, I have no idea how I was going to provide. And like 7 years ago, my agency was not my full-time income. It was literally me with 3 kids and working while they were like, my husband was the money at that point. And so when we split up, I was like, oh my God. And so it's having this panic attack of how do I make enough to feed everybody? But how do I do it in a way where I'm around? I wanted to emotionally be there post-divorce, right? And thank God, and their dad is great. It was a very amicable, respectful situation. But even so, it was a big life change for my kid.
Yeah. Divorce is never easy, no matter how easy it is.
Yeah, I mean, thank God. It was as great as it could be. He's a fantastic guy. But I wanted to financially be able to provide, but emotionally be able to be there. And so I set myself a challenge of like, how can I make enough money to feed everybody? And all that goes with having 3 kids in between 9:30 to 2:30 while they're at school. That became my challenge. And I set up my business, built a team, profitability I'll talk about in a minute, such that the next year I paid myself over $100,000 working part-time. Not sales, but like income. I paid myself out of my business over $100,000. And like I said before that, I was making $2,000 a month. So through my agency, I sort of quit all the other jobs at that point. And one by one, I'd quit them. And then at the end of that year, when I did my taxes, my bookkeeper was like, just so you know. And I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea. I didn't know that I had paid myself that much money. Anyway, how the profitability works is the key to profitability when you're using contractors. I don't have any employees. We're all contractors to the corporation. I'm a contractor. They're all contractors. So in terms of the loyalty piece, I have no one on payroll, no one getting benefits. And I think the guy who designed my logo 9 years ago is still on the team. And my first guy I hired 9 years ago is still working with me literally today on a job. I have a 4 strong team. And the key to profitability is in how you scope the job. So I work on the website. So I'll just use web as an example. So when I get a request for a quote from a client, a prospective client, I take their scope of work. Step 1, and this is going to be very situational to my agency, but I think it could apply anywhere, right? So if I get a request of, hey, Natasha, we're looking to make some changes to the website. We're going to redesign. We're going to fix this. We're going to rebuild this. We're going to do that. Step 1 is I bounce it over to my project management assistant, and she now takes over the conversation and she scopes the hell out of the job. What are we doing? Every moving piece, every design thing, every functionality thing, every hosting thing, every custom graphic, every API integration. And she creates this scope of work. Okay, we are clear on what the job is, right? We have this thing on our team, no plan, no price. Sorry, I do not ballpark price. If you're not willing to scope the project with me, I'm not your team for you. I'm a professional project manager, technical project manager, and I have learned if you don't know what you're pricing, you're going to lose money. So that's step one, is knowing how to scope a job properly. Having exclusions in place, having a change management procedure. We have a philosophy on the team, no one works for free. So if something is out of scope, there is a process for that. So if the client requests something that's not in scope, we have it written down what is in scope. We have a change management procedure for something's out of scope. And we have a very clear, badass line that is not in scope. Would you like me to estimate that for you? Yes or no? Badass. I
That's
am
awesome.
forced on a team, I'm the muscle. So anyway, so we get the scope. We got the scope packaged up. The client signed off on it. Yes, this is what we want priced. I now then send it to my team for the estimate. They look through it. They get 2 rounds of reviews on the scope of work. So they can review it, prepare any questions. So they identify any items that didn't make sense that I didn't know to ask. I'm not a programmer. I don't know. They'll have a round and they go through it one item by item and they will prepare any questions. So then that goes back to the client. Let me know if this is answering your question, but this is getting
This is great.
the client. Everything is clear with everyone involved, right? Then the team send you an estimate for their time. So they have seen the scope of work. They have answered all their questions. They come back now. We estimate 35 hours of labor, whatever. They have everything they need to price this job now, right? They are now stuck at 35 hours of labor. They cannot bill me more because they had everything, okay? So then I take that 35 hours of labor, I mark it up for taxes, admin, quality assurance, project management time. Like I now mark it up in whatever situation it is, right?
Sure.
So I then it goes back to my project management assistant. She writes up this proposal, takes her time, marks it up, margin for error, taxes, payment schedule, whatever. It goes back to the client. They then sign off on it. Let's say it's approved, comes back. We then set it all up in our project management software. My team cannot spend more money. Do you know what I mean? They cannot fill me 30, 35 hours of labor and now do 40. No. That is not the deal. You told me this. I sold it for that.
Right.
So you cannot lose money. You can't lose money. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And then if there's a scope change, for example, when I'm selling it, there's a disclaimer that says, look, this is our price. However, we have exclusions for certain things. And one of the exclusions is because I work in web, unforeseen tech problems. Let's say you work in ads and Meta all of a sudden decides they're going to close your account. And all of a sudden now you're in this tornado of chaos trying to get the client's account back online or whatever it is.
Sure.
Out of scope.
Yeah.
Out of fucking scope.
Yep.
Like, so stuff like that, because that's where agencies lose money. It's in the trickle. Do you know what I mean? It's not in the big things. It's in the 5 hours here, 2 hours here, 45 minutes there. And on you're paying it out of pocket, your team's billing you for it because they shouldn't work for free. Why is it their fault that Meta went down? It's not. They're going to be fixing it. But if you're not billing your client, you're in the red. So to me, I have hard lines on scope management, hard lines. And then if they come back, hey, I don't want to pay you to fix this, using this Meta example. I see this all the time. Like, oh, Meta closed the account and nobody knows why. Now you're trying to get a hold of tech support and customer service. And let's say you're 10 hours in to try to get the client's account back online. I wouldn't even do that until I had approval from my client that they would.
Yeah. A couple of things that are coming through to me with that is number one is being so boundaried and so clear about your boundaries. It engenders trust in not only your clients, but in your employees. And even though they're contractors, you've built this loyal team of contractors because on the one hand, you're saying, I'm not going to pay you if your time goes over. But you're giving them autonomy and ownership to say, you tell me how long this is going to take. And you're dictating the boundary here.
Yep.
And I'm helping you hold to that boundary. And if anything goes out of scope, we have a clear boundary for that as well. And I think that's so powerful. That is so powerful.
It is. And because I spent 5 years not making money, I was going to bankrupt myself because I didn't know how to make money profitably. Because what I would have done before is, let's imagine, just as an example, in the web world, as a rule, creating sliders is an exclusion. You know what I mean by a slider, right?
Mm-hmm.
It looks stupid. It's so old school. It doesn't usually work on mobile. It's a pain in the ass to set up. Not usually mobile responsive. Nobody sits and watches the slider. Pointless, stupid. So as part of design, I have an exclusion. We do not design sliders. If you want a slider design, out of scope. So the client comes back and actually we'd love to turn this section into a slider. I'm going to let's go back to item 13B, number 2. Okay, Mr. Client, we're more than happy to design it, but to let you know, the average slider is 3 to 5 hours of labor, design and development, responsiveness testing. Are we okay to go ahead with that? It's not like hey, designer, you know what? Can you just go ahead and no, no, no. Because now she's doing it and she's probably not going to bill me because she gave me the price and she's going to try to be a good person, try to be nice, and she's going to comp it, which is not fair to her at all. Again, we have a rule, like I said, on that no one works for free. So what kind of job is that if I expect my team to work for free? That's not fair to them, right? So then I go back to the client, hey, happy to do it. Like, as you saw in the original proposal and signed off on it, we don't usually design sliders for this particular reason. However, if that's something you want to do, I'd be more than happy to price it for you. Would you like me to come back to you with an estimate? Most of the time, they'd be like, oh, no, you know what? Don't worry about it. I just thought it looked cool. Like, no thing, right? Most agency people would let that slide. They'd be like, yeah, let's just do it. Or anything over half an hour is billable. If it's like a 15-minute, like, hey, can you just replace this image? If we're in a contract and it's 15 minutes, I'm not going to break my head. You know what I mean? But if it's something that's going to require some concentration and some time, usually if it's going to be anything over half an hour, out of scope.
Yeah.
And it's exactly like you said, your team feels protected. It's really funny. I run a team mostly of guys. I can obviously a bunch of programmers, right?
Yeah.
So I run a team of guys, and one of the guys on my team is an MMA fighter, and he's got all these tattoos, and he's piercings everywhere and stuff. And he's worked with me for 6 years, and he's my tech lead. So he was working on a project one time, and he was working client-facing to the client, and he was telling me that he was running into some scope issues. And I was like, well, why didn't you tell me? And he's like, I'm so afraid of what you're going to say. Like, he's like, I want to get involved. He's like, I'm gonna handle it. I'm like, start losing. He knows. It's like the mama bear, like you up, like. But he's like, let me handle it. Just stay out of it. But he had to learn, and he was willing to take the fall for it, right? He was willing to do the work for free. But that feeling, right, is they know they're safe, right? They are protected and they're respected, and it does a lot.
This is such a challenge for everyone. If you're dealing with good people, people want to go above and beyond, right? If you have people who are hard workers and they're doing good work, they want to go above and beyond. And we have this idea, we want to keep the client happy. There's such a fine line between going above and beyond in a way that is beneficial for everyone involved and going above and beyond in a way that is making yourself a doormat and really hurting your bottom line.
Yeah. I have a reputation. I kind of created this by accident. Even in the agency group you and I are part of, I'm the enforcer in the group. I interview every single person before they come in. I filter yes, no. If there's someone who's out of line, they send me in to have the conversation. And I was never that person. I was nothing like people pleaser. It took a divorce to kind of force me to be like, okay, have a little bit of courage and stand up for myself and draw some lines, which I'm very grateful for, right? But from the get-go, I like to instill a healthy sense of fear with my client. I am not your service provider. I am the fucking talent here.
Yeah.
The two of us, I'm the only one who knows what the hell is going on. I hold the cards. So if you want me, you play by my rules. That's my vibe. You're a total athlete, like badass athlete. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for a long time. I know we're good. I know we can fix this.
Yeah.
If you want to work with me, you do it my way. And I had somebody tell me one time, I think you should simplify your process. It's hard to work with you. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And that's okay. I'm okay with it. I refuse to lose money. So if you don't want me to ballpark estimate and not going to respect my process of scoping and planning and like doing this properly, you know what? You should go to this person and I have an arrangement with them and they're going to pay me 10% for the referral. Go for it. I just know me. I know my team. I want to protect them. I only want the best jobs for them. I don't want clients that are going to stress us out. It's not worth it.
I love that because I have a similar approach, maybe a little softer, which is totally fine, But because my approach with my clients is I am not an order taker, right? Like you're not giving me a specific set of orders. I have my process. I have my way of doing things. And if you want to work with me, you're going to follow my process and we're going to be partners in it. Like that's the other piece that I think is so, so key. This is a partnership. It is not I'm hiring a freelancer to do this thing for me.
No, not at all.
I'm so far beyond a freelancer, right? There's so much more to it than that. And I think that that's something that is so valuable for the client, but it's not for everyone.
But that's where people, for example, my business, and I'm going to not quit on this, I get so little bullshit in my work. You have to fire a client too. They're pushing the line and they're not respecting your process to have the courage to be like, life's too short, dude. And I'm not saying this because of the thing, but I would have said this before. I'm not losing sleep over you. Not worth it. Like, get rid of, think what you're looking for is absolutely not what my team does. I'm more than happy to introduce you over here. And you protect your space, right? I think as an entrepreneur, I say this to people all the time. In the beginning, the game is survival. It's fucking survival. It is not about let's change the world and make $1 million. It's like, how do I pay the bills today? And I'm in there and I've lived that and I get it. And it's shitty. Like you said, if you're an order taker service provider, you will lose money because people will think they can all over you. And I think that's part of it is showing up as soon as you comfortably can. And maybe not even comfortably because it's not comfortable. Professionals have boundaries. And that really helped me a lot. Professional would say no. So I'm professional. The amateurs are the ones who get jerked around. And not everyone's going to like you, right? Some people don't like me. And I know the kind of clients who don't, it's not me personally, but my style. I'm way too no bullshit. People sometimes don't love that. And I've had people tell me, we hired you because you're such a part ass. But also people are like, I need to work with someone who's way more flexible. And I'm like, fantastic. But we get to choose, right? We as the entrepreneur, we get to decide who's in our space.
And that's something that I say all the time. If you are not repelling people, you're not doing a good enough job of being clear on your branding and who you work with.
Totally.
Because you need to be so clear on that there are going to be people who come to you and they're like, nope, not for me.
Not for me. Clearly, no. You need a position, you need a stand, and you need to know. And there are people who I know will not like us. We will not be a fit. And I know that. So if I see those even come through on a discovery form, I'm going to be like, hey, I'm not even going to do a call. I'm going to be like, hey, thank you. I'm going to put you in touch with. And I think part of the entrepreneur as well is like coming back to the conversation of the team is having resources of people who do stuff you don't do. We don't do logo design. But you know what? I have an affiliate relationship over here. We don't do SEO. I have an affiliate relationship over here. Certain tech, we don't work with that. We don't work with big commerce, for example. Nobody really does. Let's say someone wants a Magento person. Okay, we don't work with Magento, but knowing who is not fit is just as important as knowing who is. Because it's going to be harder. It's going to be more stressful. It's going to stress everybody out. Know your lane. Do your thing. It makes your life so much easier, right? Being badass, that boundaries badass. Like that's your key to freedom. And then profitability also is in selling your work for a price where you're profitable.
Yep, absolutely.
You know you're worthy of high ticket pricing. You have to be worthy of it. You can't just show up as an amateur selling it for high. You have to be fucking good. But don't be afraid to show up expensive. Because there's people out there that are so tired of the $20 to $50 an hour range people. They're like, please, can I pay more to just have this done properly? Please. And now you're that person. But you have to be able to deliver. Obviously, you have to be able to do it.
I was just talking with a colleague last week. We were talking about my pricing, and it was a very eye-opening moment for me that I have to raise my prices. And he, to put things in perspective for me, directed me to a certain company, and he said, just look at their website and what they're offering. And all this company does is homepage design, and they charge 10 grand for homepage design. That's it. That's all they do. Because they're good for them. And probably they're doing really well because they've positioned themselves really, really well.
There's a reason they can charge that, right? I love that.
Because you can charge what people will pay, right? That's kind of
yeah, exactly. But it's also too, I'm sure that for that type of homepage, there's going to be a lot of UX research, there's going to be SEO, there's going to be, maybe VA who knows? But there's a reason it's worth it. And I think
absolutely.
People always think price is the only factor, and you're like, not true. Absolutely not true. There's a million factors why people choose who they choose. And I know for me, if something's too cheap, I won't buy it out of principle.
This is not my price. Like something's got to be wrong. In Canada, do you get ads for Temu? We get ads for them all the time. It's one of these knockoff websites where they sell garbage, and you see these ads and it's like, okay, you're selling that skirt for $3.50. Like something's got to be wrong with it. And then people post these pictures of like, well, you get what you pay for, right? It's a piece of trash. You said something so important in this conversation around setting boundaries and building your team and how you keep things within scope and all of that, which is life is too short. And I think in light of this crazy bombshell that you've gotten in the last couple of weeks, it's even more true. It's so important as entrepreneurs for us to realize that we need to be building the business that really fully aligns with who we are, what our values are, what's important to us, and what gives us joy. Making sure that if you're showing up and you're hating your work every day, you may as well go work for someone else and get health insurance. Why do this, right?
Right. 100%.
So one of the questions that I love asking, and I think it ties so well into this conversation, is If money were no object, what would you be doing differently, if anything, in your business?
Such a good question. I know. And I've definitely had that conversation with myself a few times this week or last week. It was a really interesting moment because when you're having a biopsy, I'll speak to breast cancer, right?
Yeah.
They test and then they put this meat thermometer size thing in your boob and they're pulling out tissue, right?
Oh, wow.
And the doctor was there beside me. And I'm like, hey, can you give me something? Please. I've been getting all these inconclusive situations. She's like, look, I've seen a lot of ultrasounds in a long time. She's like, I would prepare for the worst. I would mentally prepare that you have cancer. When I found out 3 days later, yes, okay, yes. So the next day I took the day off work and I'm like, okay, I need to have a moment of reflection. Where in my life am I misaligned to doing things I don't want to do? And it was so interesting because I went through my life and I'm like, yeah, if money was no object, what would I do? And there was so little that I would change. And it's so funny because of the freedom of entrepreneurship, we can shapeshift like that, right? When I do this, I feel like I have 3 kids. I would love to travel. Like, I mean, you have 3 kids who go to school, so
Yeah.
it's part of my thing right now. For example, I was thinking about it today. Okay, if I'm going in for surgery, having a double mastectomy, reconstruction, supposedly I'm going to be okay to work at a computer, but what if I'm not feeling like it? So I've been thinking about training a replacement, at least for the next few months, to take over my job temporarily. And what would I do? Well, I've got an idea for a book I want to do. I would love to take aerial yoga classes. I would like all these things. It's just so funny. It's like, I could though, because I know about profitable teams. I know I feel I'm not answering your question.
Oh, you totally are. I think that having built a business that really is the life that you want, it supports the life that you want, and coming to face that head on when you're dealing with this really scary situation. I can't even imagine, because I've never dealt with a health scare quite like this. So I haven't gone through that level of reflection, but I think we all should at some level, right? We should think about that. If it all went away tomorrow, what would I want my life to look like?
Exactly.
And if you can look at your life and say, this really is what I want, right? I wouldn't change that much.
That's
so powerful.
It was so powerful. And it was weird because I work with a therapist that I check in with, and she was like, well, how'd it go? Because I told her I was going to take the day. Right? I ended up binge watching Sherlock Holmes TV shows all day. Because I was thinking, what would I change? I love my connection to my kids. I love my connection to my partner. I love the work that I do. I have as much time for fitness as I want, whether I go or not. That's a second question. I love my mental health practice. I love where I live. And it really came down to, okay, I would travel more. But at this point, with the kids of the ages that they are in a joint custody situation with their dad, I'm kind of like, But you know what I did do? My partner and I, we went away for the long weekend. I would never have done that before. Maybe I can't travel big right now. Just pack the kids and go to Australia for 6 months. I can't really do that. But I can travel small. This weekend in Canada, it's another long weekend, and we're going away. It's a 2-hour flight. We're just doing a thing.
Yeah.
It's going to be, the trip's going to cost like $2,000. It's nothing. But that was the only thing I could think of, was I would travel more. Because for any moms listening to this, your life is different with kids. You don't have that kind of mobility generally.
Yeah.
It was this beautiful experience. Most of the time, I can do what I want to do. And if I don't want to do it, I know how to hire someone to do it.
Yeah, which is so cool. So cool.
Like, I'm my own host. Like, I have a housekeeper. I have 4 assistants. And I still pay myself a 6-figure income. For women, for business owners who are wanting to create that sense of freedom, in my experience, it comes in your ability to know how to build teams. That is the center.
Yeah.
Because if you are the one doing everything, you're dead. I was interviewed on a podcast a month ago, and it was about time management for solopreneurs. And they're like, what's your best time management tip for solopreneur? And I'm like, don't be a solopreneur. Get some
Yeah.
I don't think I like that idea because I don't think they published my podcast, but don't be a solopreneur.
Yeah.
Get some help.
Yep.
Like,
yes.
Don't be down. Are you a Peloton person?
I'm not a Peloton person, no.
So there's a trainer on Peloton. Maybe people are listening to it. Her name is Jess Sims, and she's always like, hey, don't lift too heavy. I mean, you're with fitness as well. Like, don't be stupid. Like, if you're feeling pain, stop. Pain, no gain is not true. She has this expression. She's like, no ego, amigo. And like that. And it's like, I say that in business to my clients. I'm like, no ego, amigo. You're not so good. You can't get help. You're not. You don't want to be the talent. Like,
exactly. We could talk forever, but I'm gonna respect your time and let you go. Tell our listeners, if they want to work with you, who exactly do you work with, and where can people find you?
So for women listening to this, who's maybe in the spot, wanting some time, maybe wanting to explore that option of full-time income, part-time hours, head over to my website, which is freeupmytime.biz. It's working now. We had a server issue last week. mytime.biz, there's a video of the story, which you can earn now, but then there's just a link to book a call. And what we do is we talk about how do we build your business around you and what brings you joy and what your strengths are and what your passions are. And then let's live our life, right?
Fantastic.
And work with incredible people that you can't wait to work with every day. That's the best part, right?
I love that. And then for your agency, who do you work with in your agency, and how can people find you there?
Thank you so much. We do generally Shopify Plus clientele, product businesses over $2 million a year, looking for custom experienced professional web development support.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank
Amazing.
you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and for sharing this very vulnerable thing that you're going through. I think that it's so important. One thing that we did not touch on, I think we talked about it before we hit record, that I think is important to just leave people with is you mentioned that when you felt this lump, you went for a mammogram and it came back negative, and you wound up pushing for additional screening and a biopsy and really advocated for yourself. And so I think that it's just important for the listeners, if you are a woman, if you have breasts, please go get checked, please go get screening, and really advocate for yourself. If something feels wrong, something feels off, you are your best health advocate.
Yep. Don't give up. Get your answers. Don't wait. Like you said, I had a cancerous lump and they said it was negative. So that's terrifying to me that women would take that at face value and, it's worse, right?
Well, thank God you pushed for additional screening, and I just wish you all the best on this journey and just can't wait to see how badly you kick cancer's ass. If anyone can do it, you can.
Exactly. No, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share, because it's so important. Because when you're a working woman, you can't usually stop for something, right? And so how do we support ourselves so we can deal when something happens?
Absolutely.
And deal calm, not frantic, but with peace and confidence and focus. Thank you so much for having me. It's always such an honor to chat with you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, beautiful humans. That's it for today's episode. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Bold Women in Business podcast, hosted by yours truly, Rachel Honeyman, with music by Shmukalele. This show is brought to you by my company, Honeybebold, where we build bold, unstoppable brands and websites for kick-ass women in business. If you are a female entrepreneur or dream of being one, and you want to take your business to a level that no one can resist, reach out to me at hey@honeybebold.com for a free vibe check. Honey, be bold. See you next time.